Yeah, he's
Okay,
ready.
so we're going
Go
to
ahead.
start day 2 of the board meeting.
Greg Lippy, public member.
Who is that guy? What was your name again?
Albert Wall, professional member.
Victor Law, professional member.
Amy Gutierrez, professional member.
Alan Shad, professional member.
Amjad Khan, public member.
Debbie Veal, professional member.
So we're going to start out with a just a special announcement on where is Anne? We're going to recognize Anne, and this is on behalf of the governor's office in recognition of your 25 years of dedicated service. Anne is
You can't hide by doing this.
Anne is a very important part of our board, and she is very integral and very involved in so many of the successes and the operations of this board. We are very appreciative of having her and of her 25 years of service. Ginny, I'm sure you want to say a few words.
It's amazing she started at age 12 too. That's what's
Yes.
In all seriousness, she did. I think at the very least you ought to be standing up for this.
Come on up here, Anne.
Yeah, a little more
Come on up here.
humiliation.
I'm going to pay for this.
like torture for Ann Sodergren.
I know. She hates it. Do we have a spotlight we can put right on?
Come on, she needs to be right up here. Thank you for everything you do. We are so very fortunate.
But we're not quite done yet, and I better be careful. I'll be scratching this up. Anne started with us as a student, well, actually as a proctor, doing the old pharmacist exam in those great big halls where we
She
used
was
it.
12.
I know, that's what I'm doing. I'm just agreeing with the comment. And she is a valuable employee. We're incredibly lucky to have her. She works very hard. She makes the board look good on a regular basis. And most importantly, not everyone has the consumer protection focus, the drive, and the real commitment to put consumers first and go with it. I'm very pleased to say she's a kindred spirit in that, and I am delighted that, and we are all fortunate that she's here. Now, look at how pretty this is. Now you got my fingerprints all over it too, because it's one of those things that's picking them up. My life of crime is over. This is very simple. It just says, in recognition of your 25 years of dedicated service, Ann Sodergren, and you clocked that milestone on June 1st, 2017. So here you are. Here you are. So I got to be careful here. Thank you so much for your work, Ann. Do you want to say something?
Wait, can we all hug her though?
Yeah, you know what? She truly does.
And since we're talking about we're going to go into enforcement and compounding, one of the things that's really impressed me about Anne is she's not a pharmacist, but she's dived right into these compounding regulations. She's been, I've been so impressed. You're like an honorary pharmacist in my eyes. So thanks for all that you do for us and the board. All right, Alan, you are on the long-awaited Enforcement and Compounding Committee report.
Yes, okay. This is a report of the committee meeting held September 15th, 2017. A copy from this is provided in attachment 1. A summary goes as such. A. Discussion and consideration of discrepancies between the state and federal controlled substance schedules and their impact on healthcare services and potential changes to impact laws and regulations. Medications with the potential to be the most highly abused.
Have you heard, Alan?
Huh?
We have to hear you.
All right.
Alan, can you start over?
Yeah. I'm glad I have this opportunity to speak to you today. Okay, medications with the potential to be the most highly abused or lead to addiction are classified under separate federal and state laws into 5 lists of scheduled drugs. Both federal and California law number these schedules by Roman numerals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The lower the number, the higher potential for abuse. The California Controlled Substances Schedules are codified in the California Health and Safety Code. This statutory law and no single agency is responsible for ensuring the lists are current with respect to drugs of abuse and addiction. The Federal Controlled Substances Schedules are promulgated federally principally by the DEA and are found in the Federal Code of Regulations. Scheduled 1 drugs are generally not intended for medicinal use, except under tightly controlled research studies and are considered illegal or street drugs. Marijuana is a Schedule 1 drug federally, and LSD is a Schedule 1 drug in both federal and state schedules. Schedule 2 drugs have medicinal value and are prescribed under tightly controlled conditions, but also have high abuse or addiction potential. Examples are morphine, oxycodone, hydromorphone, Adderall. In California, these meds must be prescribed on a California security form or e-prescribed according to specific federal requirements. And it cannot be ordered via telephone or refilled even one time. An original new prescription is needed for each dispensing unless the original prescription has been partially filled, and then there are time limits to fully fill the prescription. Schedule 3 and 4 drugs have a lesser addictive and abuse potential, but are still more tightly controlled than regular prescribed medications. For example, in California, they are subject to more restrictive prescribing requirements, including the use of security forms if written limits on refilling a prescription to 6 months and limits the quantity of all aggregate refills and a limit on the number of refills. However, unlike Schedule 2 drugs, these medications can be orally ordered for patient by the prescriber. In California, prescriptions written for scheduled drugs must be prescribed by prescribers using specialized prescription forms ordered from the California Department of Justice, a licensed printer. There are specific security features in these forms: thermochromic ink, watermarks. Scheduled drugs may be prescribed electronically under e-prescribing systems that meet federal requirements, but faxing a prescription, where the prescription is faxed to a pharmacy, is not authorized because of the original signature requirements. Schedules 3 to 5 medications can be orally ordered in California. Generally, there is a high degree of similarity in how medications are classified under federal and state schedules. However, there are some differences between federal and state schedules. For example, federal law classifies hydrocodone as a Schedule 2 drug, but under California law, hydrocodone is a Schedule 3 drug. Federal law today classifies tramadol as a Schedule 4 drug, but it is not scheduled under California law. Nevertheless, the lack of agreement in how a given drug is classified between the federal and state schedules makes for interesting results. While prescribing for hydrocodone is a Schedule 2 drug federally, because it is a Schedule 3 drug in California, there is question about whether hydrocodone can be dispensed by refills, which are allowed for a C3 drug but not for a C2 drug. In addition to hydrocodone being classified as a federal in a different federal schedule than California, several additional drugs of abuse are federally scheduled but not scheduled at all in California, specifically tramadol and soma. One last statement regarding the difference between the two sets of schedules. Federal law exempts from scheduling combination drugs where the ratio of the controlled drug versus the non-controlled ingredient is that federal law exempts the drug from being a controlled drug. California has not adopted the same exemptions. Below are examples of products exempt under federal law but not exempt in California: Furoset, Donatol, Phenobarb, Librax, and chlordiaz epoxide. Basically, if it's a combination that has ingredients such as chlordiaz epoxide, phenobarb, butalbital, pentobarbital, meprodramate, etc. on federal exempt list, these medication products remain controlled drugs in California. So, the committee discussion and action. The Enforcement and Compounding Committee discussed this issue and directed staff to evaluate systems that could mesh the federal and state schedules in a manner that preserves requirements of each, but ensures that the more highly classified structure of a drug in either schedule would take precedence in California. So, the recommended motion: direct staff to evaluate the differences in the two schedules to determine a way to mesh the federal and state schedules in a manner that preserves the requirements of each, but ensures that the more highly classified placement takes precedence in bringing it back to an enforcement committee for review. So, do we have to do anything with that?
There's a committee recommendation here, right?
Right.
Do we need a motion then? So we just need to vote on it. Okay, so you probably want to do public comment first. Board member comment.
Board member comments on that? Public comment?
Couldn't quite get to the button. I think it's a good idea.
I think your thinking is good. Okay.
You agree with the committee?
I agree with the committee.
Any
And
public
committed
comment?
seconds.
You want to call for? Let's call for the vote.
Vote for the vote.
All in favor?
Either hand is fine. with
Greg,
me.
are you voting? Yes. Okay.
Well done. Well done.
Unanimous.
Unanimous.
May I ask a question of the board, just to, as the staff that will probably be involved in drafting said?
As
I'm
the
ass- I'm
staff
ass-
who is.
I'm assuming that what the board wants, and it sounds like what the motion is to have California law somehow reflect that whichever, if it's a C2 at federal or C2 at state, then that would take precedence over if it's a C3 on the other one.
Right.
So basically, all requirements in California law that apply separately to higher scheduled drugs would apply regardless of which schedule it appears on at a higher level. Okay? I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Right again. Okay. B, discussion and consideration of proposed 2018 board-sponsored legislation. Oh, okay.
We gotta hear you.
Okay. B, discussion and consideration of proposed 2018 board-sponsored legislation regarding cures. Background. At the January 2017 board meeting, the board identified multiple items for future changes they would like to see made to the Cures program. The board has directed staff to pursue implementation strategies for these proposals. Specifically, the board proposed the following changes. There are 4 of them. A, add days supply of medication into the viewing screen of a patient when the pharmacists access the system. B, make modifications to permit prescribers to view the patients and prescriptions in the Cures where they are identified as the prescriber. C, require dispensers to report data to Cures within 48 hours of dispensing. Currently, the time frame is no longer than 7 days. D, add the reporting of Schedule 5 medications dispensed to the Cures system, because currently federal Schedule 2 to 4 medications are required to be entered. Item A was activated by the Department of Justice soon after they participated in a discussion with the board. For months, pharmacists have been able to view days' supply of medication for each medication entered into the profile. The remaining 3 items have not been incorporated. Item B may need to be made statutorily. Items C and D will require legislation. At the July 2017 board meeting, staff from the Department of Justice made a presentation to the board on Cures 2.0 implementation. During the part of the presentation, the Department of Justice staff indicated willingness to work with the board on possible statutory modification to the Cures system in the ensuing year. Committee discussion and action. The committee discussed the above items. Additional discussion included that California is one of 7 states that is not sharing its prescription monitoring program across state lines. The minutes detail this discussion. So now for a motion, which is to sponsor the following provisions in the 2018 legislation. 1. Make modifications to permit prescribers to view the patients and prescriptions and Cures where they are identified as the prescriber. Require dispensers to report Cures data within 48 hours of dispensing. Add the reporting of Schedule 5 medications to the Cures system. And secure interstate data exchange of PDMP information. And Attachment 2 contains the text of this proposed legislative change. So we have a motion, staff discussion, or board discussion.
Yeah. Is there any way that we could ask the DOJ for the Cures program when the pharmacists access the program that is easier for us to reset the password? Because right now there's nothing that we could reset the password, and you have to call in person, and that number is nobody answered the phone, and they said they will not call you back. You have to keep calling back at certain times, and it's hard to get hold of them. So anyway, you could set up the program like any bank or anything. You could reset a password if you haven't been locked out for a while.
Online.
Yeah, online.
I have a meeting scheduled in the next week or 2 with DOJ to talk about the outcome of where we're going right now. And I will put that in as part of the discussion. That's a programming issue that was built into the system. And I will tell you that DOJ strongly adheres to a really strong password system for access. But I will bring it up, and maybe we can start some discussions about some long-term modification to cures that may get you there.
That's terribly inefficient. I didn't.
Yeah, it takes a
Yeah,
long.
very
So-
inefficient.
So Alan, Jenny was just telling me that there's some data that after the committee meeting which she obtained in terms of when we have requires dispensers to report data into cures within 40 hours of dispensing. We had asked Jenny to go look and see what other states are doing. And what did you find, Jenny?
I found that we have one state, and this data I got over the weekend. One state has immediate submission of data into their system, and that's Oklahoma. 35 states require that you submit data within 24 hours. 3 report within 72 hours, and 10 have our 7 days. I would respectfully ask that the board consider, instead of 48 hours to report to cures, instead use the next business day, which is kind of move them into like a 24-hour. And by using the next business day, it solves that problem where you may have a 3-day weekend.
Especially since 35 states already have that,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
right?
I agree.
So we would have to reject this and
or modify it.
Or
like we did-
modify it. I
like we
think
did
Laura
yesterday.
told us yesterday we could do this. We could accept the committee's recommendation and modify.
And while I'm thank
Motion to accept the committee's recommendation, except to modify the PDMP submission time within the next business day instead of 48 hours.
may I respectfully request one additional submission based on what I've got in front of me? We have 20, so just so that we know where we're going and how we're swimming with the other fish, we have 20 states that are currently tracking in their PDMP schedules 2 through 5 with the ability to add additional drugs of concern. One of the drugs that currently are being discussed nationally is gabapentin as a possible item. So if the board decided, or on the basis of our enforcement cases, that was a problem, that would be one thing we could go with. 13
Ellen
states,
would go along with that.
Oh, I certainly would. Yes.
After-
Yes.
that's why I was looking at you.
Thank you.
13 states use schedules 2 through 5. 11 states use 2 through 4 like we do, and 5 states use 2 through 4 with additional drugs of concern being able to be added. So we're kind of swimming.
5 with additional.
Yes.
Yes. And then if you want to add additional drugs of concern in the event, Soma, for example, it still isn't scheduled in California, but for a long time was a drug that was problematic, as was tramadol, and it could never get put into cures. So, right.
So are you okay with that modification, Greg? And who is Greg's second?
I second.
Victor.
Are you okay with that, Victor? Okay, I think public comment.
Can we restate it just one more time so I'm really clear what
Yeah,
the
we're going to approve the committee recommendation modified to change the reporting to cures to the next business day, and to state that the medication, the PDMP, would be for Schedule 2 to 5 plus additional drugs of concern.
Any public comment?
And you are keeping, because you kind of went over the committee's recommendations.
Yeah,
So
we
you are keeping
approved
number
that.
4, okay.
Yeah.
So you changed number 2 to,
Yeah, just change number 2 to
and you changed
next
number
business
3.
day.
Morning, Bob.
and number 3 to adding
Okay,
uh,
got it.
additional medications of concern, drugs of concern.
Good morning, Robert Stein, KGI School of Pharmacy. With respect to cures, everyone knows from a public policy standpoint that keeping track of these and having clinicians aware is very important. But just like a credit report can contain errors, an individual patient report can contain errors, and that could be unbeknownst to the actual patient, which can
Mhm.
result in potential therapy changes or denial of getting legitimate medications. I just want to point out that currently on the California DOJ website, and I mentioned this to Jenny, currently it does not actually tell the patients that they actually have the right to receive that from a clinician or a provider. Actually, it says a healthcare practitioner. But that brings up the interesting question. At the point where we are dispensing medications, can the patient get a copy of their report by the pharmacist? And there seems to be some question in terms of the interpretation of whether a pharmacist qualifies as a healthcare practitioner under that particular provision.
Are you recommending we add pharmacists to be able to provide patient access reports
Absolutely.
to the patient?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Any place where the drug is being prescribed or dispensed, the patient should have the ability to see what it is that a judgment's being made against them.
Good point.
Thanks.
Thank you. So are you willing to modify your motion to include
that's a very
I'm
good
very
point.
agreeable today.
Victor?
I am also.
Any other public comment? Okay, all in favor? Okay.
Chair, before we leave, I have one more proposal. This one is not in the packet, but
Go ahead.
I seem to be spending a lot of time with the issue of opioid abuse and drug diversion, folks. And one of the concepts that seems to be pretty much mainstream right now is the movement to require e-prescribing for prescriptions. We've had federal requirements for quite a while. A number of states are moving in that direction. And while we were waiting for closed session to end, I surveyed some of the individuals representing large corporations in the audience. They would be comfortable if we were to establish a requirement, perhaps in 2 or 3 years, for conversion from the current system to e-prescribing for, I'd say, all prescriptions, but we can take up just controlled drugs for purposes of starting the discussion. The part of the problem we have as enforcement in this area is our forms are so compromised that people aren't stealing them anymore. They're going
Hold on. Can we talk about that if it's not on the agenda?
the way it
I'm
was
gonna ask-
agendized. Yes, because the separate things
Okay.
were not listed.
Because we're talking now about electronic prescribing of controlled substances. So it's not the cures report, it's prescribing. I want to make sure our
No, that's
attorneys
fine.
are keeping
Fair
us
enough.
on
Fair
track.
enough.
Could that be just another agenda item for the committee on the next committee meeting? Chair?
Well,
Meeting
certainly.
next month.
So tell me a little bit more about where you're headed with the
I am
proposal.
proposing that the board sponsor an amendment to move us to requiring e-prescribing for controlled drugs and ideally for everything, but particularly for controlled drugs, because where I was going was we're seeing a large number of compromised prescription pads being sold by printers that are supposedly state licensed to the degree that pharmacies are getting dinged with citations and fines for failure to have the right form. And if they're going to counterfeit the prescriptions, or if they're going to get fake prescriptions and have them filled in pharmacies, let's take the burden away and have them go to e-prescribing, which is a harder system to break. A number of states are moving in that direction or already have the requirement in place. It's an integral
Ledge
tool
Reg.
that is being used as part.
Would that go to Ledge Reg Committee to review? As proposed legislation, right?
Could go either way to ledge reg or enforcement. Unless the e-prescribing is somehow already regulated by cures, I do think that you're
It doesn't
you're off
regulate
your
by cures.
agenda.
Okay.
So I think you
Then we'll
probably
schedule
want
it for the next
to
meeting.
table it for another meeting.
And make
But,
sure we
but while we have this interlude, can I ask a follow-up about the board's
Person?
prior motion to
Yeah.
to come up with legislation regarding the schedules? It occurred to us, Laura primarily, afterwards, that there could be questions about the scope of what the board is hoping to accomplish. Is it just that you want pharmacists and pharmacies to treat all drugs by the highest schedule, or the lowest schedule, but the most stringent schedule
Yes.
that they appear on? Or are you also wanting the legislation to reach how prescribers should act with regard to those drugs? Because if you don't, I could imagine there being disconnects between how a prescriber writes it on a, writes it as a 3 because it's hydrocodone, but the pharmacist says they can, or wants to do an oral prescription for hydrocodone because they think it's a 3, but the pharmacist won't accept it because they think it's a 2. So, but on the other hand, it's very unusual, and this would also be true for the e-prescribing thing.
Yeah.
Although we're not going to talk about that, but it's unusual for this board to seek legislation that regulates prescribers,
Yes.
but it's not unheard of. We've had things like the prescriber dispensing statutes and things like that reach outside of this board's typical
I think if we're
jurisdiction.
talking about consistency between federal and state, we should really also talk about consistency between prescribers and pharmacists. So I
Okay.
think that's a really good point.
Okay.
I think we should do both. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's confusing. Again,
And they catch on fast to this sort of thing.
okay, Alan.
Oh, are we still on me?
Now to the next one.
All right. Discussion and consideration of the board policy to conduct inspections on all pharmacies every 4 years. Background. Last year, during the board's sunset review, a proposal was made to require that the board perform inspections on all pharmacies once every 4 years. The goal was to ensure that all pharmacies would have a compliance inspection during this time. The focus of these inspections would be aimed at compliance and education, and not specifically due to the performance. I lost my. Where the focus of these inspections would be aimed at the compliance and education, and not specifically due to performance of a sterile compounding inspection, nor due to the need for an investigation of a complaint or possible violation of pharmacy law. During the discussion, the board concluded that a statutory requirement to perform compliance inspections every 4 years was not necessary, and instead developed a policy that the board inspectors would inspect all pharmacies once every 4 years. Below is inspection data for the prior 4 years, which I'm not going to read. As a reminder, education of licensees is an important part of the board's operations. The board educates licensees in a variety of ways as described below. We've got the script, we've got presentations, subscriber alert system, the self-assessment forms, and the Ask Inspector program. Additionally, the board now requires every pharmacist to take at least 2 CE units of education provided directly by the board as a condition of license renewal. A periodic inspection by the board inspector where compliance is the focus would further benefit the public through improved education of board licensees. It would also allow identification of violations before they come to the board's attention in other ways as well. Committee discussion and action. During the meeting, the committee discussed the statistics and directed staff to establish means to ensure all pharmacies will be inspected every 4 years. The committee emphasized that these inspections need to be accomplished with existing resources. The board staff will provide periodic reports to the committee on its progress to achieve this compliance inspections. Among the reports requested will be graphs to compare the activities of inspectors by the number of inspections, investigations, and other work. Staff will also research requirements in other states for inspections and their frequency. D. Discussion and consideration of possible statutory or regulatory changes to expand the use of automated drug delivery systems. Background. There is increasing interest in the demand for expanded use of ADDS in pharmacies, clinics, and other environments to provide medications to patients. Generally, there are 2 major forms of these machines. 1, storage of medication until specific dose is needed for the patient, like a Pyxis machine in hospitals and skilled nursing facilities, where the medication is obtained by a healthcare provider after it has been ordered for a patient. Number 2 is storage of full dosing regimen for a specific patient awaiting patient pickup, as in the Asteris machine under study by UC San Diego. The ADDS that comply with the requirements established by California Code of Regulations, Section 1713, for refills that patients opt in to use from a machine adjacent to a pharmacy counter. The use of ADDS via remote technology as authorized in clinics by license by Business and Professions Code 4186. At a technology summit held by the board earlier this year, various forms of technology were demonstrated. A summary of the technology was categorized and organized into a table, which is provided as attachment 3. In 2017, there were 2 legislative proposals introduced in the California legislature to allow for the additional uses of these machines. A machine that can store medication in fire departments and EMSA offices to replenish ambulance supplies when convenient for ambulance. This is sponsored by the board and enacted. A machine installed in clinics operated by a pharmacy to dispense 340B drugs to qualified patients. This has been stalled in the legislature. Attachment 4 contains 3 sections of California pharmacy law that specifically address the ADS-DS machines. During the year, the board staff has been working to resolve various issues relating to the existing law that we have in this area. Under Health and Safety Code section 1261.6, where medication can be stored for unit dose administrations to patients by healthcare personnel after the medication is delivered to a skilled nursing facility by a pharmacy. 1. Who can fill the machines? 2. Who can deliver the medication to the facility? Should storage in vehicles be prohibited? What type of security during transportation is required? 3. Can the medications be stored at the facility before loading into the machine? If so, where? 4. How will expired medications be removed? Under a Business and Professions Code, sections 4105.5, 4186, and California Code of Regulations, section 1713, where patients will be dispensed their medication. Is patient consent required to use the ADDS? How often does it need to be reviewed or reaffirmed? Is patient consultation required? When? Only on initial fills? Is a phone connection adequate, or is a video camera also needed? How can language interpretations be secured? Should ADDS be placed in a non-pharmacy area? If so, how should the security of medications and patient confidentiality be provided? How long may a refill be provided? Should all medications be available? Should patients be reminded about the need for some drug therapy to be monitored periodically via testing? If so, how would this be meshed into patient care? General questions. Who can own or operate this? If a pharmacy must own ADDS, can it do so from an out-of-state location? Where can, or even if, drug stock that will be placed in the machine may be temporarily stored outside the machine, in locked areas, transport vehicles, etc.? Should the board inspect the machines? Should authentication systems ensure the appropriate patient gains access to the stored medication? Discussion and action. Once the questions above are addressed, the committee suggested a self-assessment process be established to promote compliance. The committee directed the Chairperson Shad, who has not followed through on this, with staff on developing framework for the future regulation, and bring this to the next Enforcement and Compounding Committee.
I'm not sure you pronounced the chairperson's last name properly.
You know, I have trouble with that, and so do other people.
Alan?
Yes.
Can I go back to the last section on the inspection every 4 years?
Uh-huh.
If the inspector have go visit certain pharmacy for certain complaint, they usually inspect the whole pharmacy.
Correct.
Can we count that as an inspection so to eliminate duplication?
We intend to, but again, part of that may or may not work because part of the investigation has a different philosophy behind it than a compliance inspection. Initially, we probably will want to count it for both. Long term, we'd like to develop a system by which they can have separate compliance inspections. May not be feasible, but yeah. Very astute question.
Okay. Bring this to the next Enforcement and Compounding Committee, which will be.
I don't think we have to make
So,
a motion
are you
for it.
looking for feedback on these many questions from the board, or are you just kind of laying them out there? These are all the things you're kind of thinking about, and
Well, this is just kind of the stuff that we're thinking about. Chairman Shad will work with the staff to develop.
I think
I mean-
generally, Debbie, if you're the committee's general consensus was that we really want to move forward to providing patients with options, but we want to make sure that the security features are in place. So, I mean, I had asked, for example, well, how are ATM machines secure? Can we use some of that language? And then looking for options in order to expand this. I think that's what Alan's going to be working with the staff to do.
And this action item doesn't require a motion or
No.
anything. We can just.
So generally, are we on the right course? I mean, asking the other board members, are we on the right course? Is this where you want to go?
Yes.
Yeah, because I think that's why we sent it to the enforcement, because we really like the ADDs and
Yeah.
want to move forward and figure out a way to make
Yes.
them
Right.
part of the, they're the part of the
Agreed.
future whether we like it or not.
I think the committee agrees. It was
Yep.
just
Yeah. So it's just okay.
And
So I think you guys are asking all the right questions. How's that?
Good.
again,
Perfect.
If that darn chairman would just kind of, work with the staff and get moving forward, maybe get something happening.
he should be replaced as far as I'm concerned.
he's doing a good job.
All right, E, discussion and consideration of the University of California, San Diego experimental program regarding access to medications from an ADDS pursuant to California Code of Regulations, Title 15, Section 1706.5. Background. At the July 2017 board meeting, the board heard and discussed the results of the UCSD experimental study involving the use of ADDS technology to dispense new and refill medications to outpatients in an area non-adjacent to a pharmacy counter. This study involves a waiver of California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Section 1713, in that it allows the first-time fills to be dispensed via a machine, and the machine does not have to be adjacent to the pharmacy counter, but is installed in a hospital location. During the July meeting, the board heard the final report of the study and supported a request from UCSD to extend the study for 1 year to provide additional data regarding the study and time for the board to consider regulation modification involving ADDS to provide medication to patients. At the July meeting, the board had questions regarding the study, which are highlighted in attachment 5. Following the discussion, the board approved the following motion. Extend the UC San Diego study for another 12 months until July 25, 2018. Additionally, the request that the data provided by the board provided to the board include distinction between new prescriptions and previously dispensed prescriptions. The discussion during the September Enforcement and Compounding meeting, the committee heard presentations from Asteris and UC San Diego. During the presentation, Dr. Hirsch requested that the following changes be made to the data collection parameters for the study moving forward. Return to stock, continue to collect the data. Pickup time, continue to collect the data. The kiosk patient survey data, again, continue to collect. Counseling logs, continue to complete the logs through the end of 2017. And truly new prescriptions, add this manual data collection to the study. Therapeutic class, remove this from the study. The committee discussed whether the study should be extended longer than 1 year to build in time to gather more data and, if appropriate, to secure statutory or regulation changes. The staff council also requested that the amended IRB be provided to the board at the next meeting. A full discussion can be found in the minutes provided in attachment 1. After consideration, the committee made the following motions. Approve the changes to the study as provided below and direct staff to work with UCSD to ensure that the changes are made to the IRB that are consistent with the committee's discussion. The same topics as I mentioned above. Now let's see. So do we need to make a motion? We've got a motion. Yeah. So the committee recommendation motion: direct UCSD to provide study updates to the enforcement committee every 6 months, and that's it. Yeah. So staff board comments. Any
Public comments.
Public comments. Oh, come on. We really don't want to hear from you, but go ahead.
I know you. Heard from Asteris. Since I've been coming to this board meeting, I had 2 children. I now have 3, and I now have a grandchild. So
Is there a coded message in that?
yeah, kind of been for a while. But anyway,
Has Chairman Shad been chairman of that committee the whole time?
I think what he's saying is that board meetings increase fertility, isn't that what he's saying?
Direct correlation. Direct.
Wow.
no, but I have less gray hair.
I would like to point out we're webcasting.
We're going to a
And
place
there's a
that I'm
record in
uncomfortable.
perpetuity
Let's
created
please
here.
bring it back to.
No, our point is those are great. Thank you for reading that
Dr. Chad, I appreciate that. Is there a way we can get a list of all those things that you're looking for so we can address each and every one of those in a written comment back to you? All those suggestions and recommendations you just,
Right. Uh-huh.
can we get a copy of that? Is that something we can get?
It's in the chair report.
It'll be in the
it's
chair
on the
report.
web.
We can respond to that. Would be
Well,
allowed to
the-
respond to
It'll be
that.
go back to the enforcement committee.
Okay, so we would
I
respond to
think
that and go back to the enforcement.
I
It's
think
already- it's already- I think
isn't
you
it
guys already
reflected
have
in the
IRB,
the
it
revised
is.
IRB that's in
It
the
is.
Yeah.
meeting materials?
IRB is everything that you
IRB
suggest is in the IRB, because we've gotten them both approved by UCSD as well as pharmacy as well as Sharp.
Dr.
Yeah.
Hirsch is on the phone right now, so if we have quick. Oh, okay.
I think she has all those, Mark.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to
She's-
make sure. We just want to make sure we're getting everything you guys need so we can move this forward.
Well, I do have one question for the board, but it doesn't so much for you. The committee extended data collection for 1 year. Technically, that would be March of 2017 through March 2018. But UCSD thought that was July 2017 through July 2018. The problem is we're going to find ourselves in a position again where if we have to do a regulation or a statutory change in order to have it in effect, even if we were to start now on the regulation, if the board were to go in that direction, I doubt we could have the regulation complete, given the history we went through the regs yesterday, that we would have it complete by July 2018. And so I think the board needs to determine as part of this so that we don't keep bringing it back every 6 months to push the dates further back, a firm term ending date that's a little more realistic than July even 2018.
So what are you suggesting?
I would suggest July 2019, and that would give another year behind it, and that would give the board time to either get legislation in place. That's how it chooses to
Are
pursue.
the individuals in the pilot agreeable to that term?
well,
He could have another grandchild with
Otherwise
it.
they have to
The
pull
board
it out.
the board can authorize the length
then
of
they
the
can just
study,
make a decision.
whether or not they choose to continue the study that long. It wouldn't they wouldn't be required.
But we have patients getting drugs from this machine. This will disrupt that particular care if they become accustomed to it and genuinely like it. So
our
Right.
ultimate goal is to get Regulation 1713 augmented and approved by the board. That's been the whole goal all along.
Well, so the study itself is the means by which the board can modify a regulation so that it can collect data and then make a determination. The issue of whether or not the reg is actually changed is still it's not part of this discussion. I understand
Doesn't have to be a
what
separate-
So
executive
we can
officer-
extend to
So,
19 and they
Why
can
don't
just
we?
finish
Can I
early.
make a motion then to accept the committee's recommendation with the addition of the 2019 date?
Modification.
Second that,
The
Greg.
second, yeah.
Is that okay, Laura?
Yes.
To extend it to the to approve to. I made a motion to take the committee's recommendation and modify it to add the 2019 date. And Greg seconded it.
Okay.
Any other public comment? All in favor?
Can I just clarify, I see there's two committee motions, which one are we voting on?
Oh, okay.
There's
okay.
a
The
Good, good.
Maybe
the
motion to
committee
staff.
recommendation. I think there is one motion I see.
There's a
The other one's just a staff recommendation.
I see a committee, it says committee recommendation motion approve the changes to the study.
Oh, there's two. Okay, I'm sorry. It's the second one.
Updates, yeah.
It's on the second page. Direct USC to
Okay, that's
UCSD
the
to
one
provide
we're gonna go back
study
and do the
updates.
other one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to do the first one then, Alan?
Go
Committee
ahead.
recommendation: approve the changes to the study.
Oh, right. And we've done, okay.
and the date.
So we probably need to vote on that one.
Is that where are you putting the date change there, or are you putting the date change in the other one?
I put it on this one right here. Study updates to the enforcement committee every 6 months. Oh yeah, you probably should put it on this one, right?
It's on the first one.
Right.
You're right, Debbie.
She has been right so many times today. It's been great.
Can we make sure the minutes reflect what Dr. Shad said?
I don't think it hurts to put 2019 in both motions. I don't think it really hurts to do that because it's going to reinforce each other. So then I'll make a motion to approve the committee recommendation, the first one, which is approve the changes to the study as provided below and direct staff to work with UCSD to ensure the changes made to the IRB are consistent with the committee's discussion. And there's a number of bullets under that. with the and actually add the 2019 date on there. Through what month was it, Ginny? July
It'd be the board meeting we have,
2019.
Yeah.
Hey, is there a second? Do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Yes. Greg, you want to
Greg,
second that?
we almost lost it.
Okay.
I heard it.
Second. Public comment? All in favor?
Okay, now for the second motion.
Waivers.
Oh, waivers. Are we there already?
I think we did the second one. That was the first one we
Oh,
voted
okay.
on.
Did
I
we
took them
vote on
out
it?
of order. Yeah.
Didn't vote on the first
We didn't
one.
vote on it because as you were asking for the votes when I interrupted you.
Oh, okay. So let's vote on the second one. Direct UCSD to provide steady updates to the enforcement committee every 6 months. Public comment
Through the final date of.
through July 2019.
19.
I will make a motion to modify that to July 2019. Well, she's saying we didn't vote on
We
it.
didn't vote on it, but we made the
Okay.
motion and I seconded it.
All in favor?
All right, great.
Hey, Alan, waivers.
Okay, the status of a report on waivers for compounding construction and compliance delays pursuant to California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Section 1735.6 and 1751.4. Background, Title 16 of California Code of Regulations states that where compliance with California compounding regulations requires physical construction or alteration to a facility or physical environment, the board may grant a waiver for a period of time to permit the required physical changes. There is a related provision in the CCR section 1751.4 which provides the same allowances for sterile compounding facilities. An application for any waiver must be made in writing, identify what the provisions requiring the physical construction or alteration, provide a timeline. The board is able to grant the waiver for a specified time period when, in its discretion, good cause is demonstrated. Initial review of the waiver is performed by staff led by the executive officer who approves or denies the request. Approval or denial of a waiver is provided to facilities in writing. If a waiver is denied, there is an appeal process which will be reviewed by 2 board members, currently Shad and Law. The goal of the construction waiver process is to secure full compliance at the earliest possible time. Facilities that have been denied a waiver have been made aware and that there is a process. Such waiver appeals go to the subcommittee of Shad and Law, and there have been no additional appeals since July 1, 2017. Most waiver request sections, 1735.6 and 1751.4, are for the external venting requirement for compounding hazardous drugs. Recent update. The waiver review process is ongoing as pharmacies continue to seek extensions or modifications, often due to construction delays in their facilities to comply with USP 800. The executive officer has provided specific timeline to facilities requesting a waiver with respect to the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development approval. Status reports the construction and final completion dates. Until mid-October, the implementation of USP 800 was July 1, 2018. The board has been using this date as the final end date for the waiver that is issued. However, this time frame was not recently extended until December 1, 2019, when modifications to 797 are also expected. As such, the board needs to explore how it will handle waiver requests for the compliance that will occur beyond July 2018. Additionally, the board continues to receive requests for waivers well beyond even the December 2019 dates, sometimes as long as 2022. The board will have an opportunity to discuss this issue at this board meeting.
Alan, can we maybe just, in terms of guidance to the board, to the members and the executive officer, can we just do the extension now to December 2019 instead of July 2018? Because our mark was the whole USP 800 deadline. Now, since that's been extended to December 2019, can we maybe authorize the executive officer to allow waivers to go on through December 2019? Just an idea that I'm throwing out there.
I like that idea.
What do you guys think? So I'll just make a motion to that. We have a quorum?
Wait until Greg comes back.
Okay. Okay, as soon as I get back, I'll do a motion. So go ahead, Alan, I'm sorry.
All right. Well, we'll talk about the status of the waiver requests. Well, total waivers received 609, and process 607. 640 of them were denied. 100 of them were withdrawn. 308.
Can I just ask you, the withdrawn ones, is that because did they? I mean, they know they maybe had some issues, or were they just kind of withdrawn on their own? That they changed their
We
mind?
withdrew them or they withdrew them. It depends. Sometimes people were non-responsive. They would get 2 or 3 emails seeking information to further explain what they needed or what they intended.
Sometimes
do.
people submitted the request when they really didn't need to
Right.
either. So
Okay,
they got
that's the other piece
confused.
of it.
Yeah, they're just trying to get covered.
So Alan, since Greg's back, I'm going to go ahead and make
All right,
a
great,
motion
great. Yeah.
that we direct the executive officer and staff to extend the regulations, the waivers, until December 2019 to be consistent with the new USP 800 deadline.
So I would just recommend that you authorize her to allow the extension of
Right.
waivers because
I like that language better.
because people
It's
may
not-
not necessarily need all that time, and we
Allow
don't want
her
to
to
automatically
request
extend.
an extension up until December 2019 if necessary.
And one of the things I think that I would like to do during this period too is to continue to put on inspection reports when we're out there if they have a waiver in place, that they have a waiver, and so that they're not that it's a correction basically, that there is an issue that they're not fully compliant but they're moving towards compliance, so that we can distinguish between those that are moving towards compliance and those that are not doing anything towards compliance.
So we're going to give them a correction if they have a waiver. Is that what you're saying?
That way we can put it on the inspection report so we can identify where we've identified
But
non-compliance.
if we've given them a waiver, why are we giving them a correction?
We're acknowledging that they're moving forward to completion to separate from those that aren't doing that, because we do have some pharmacies that either don't understand or aren't moving.
But you're afraid that you're going to issue a waiver and then they're just going to sit there and do nothing for.
That is a concern staff have.
That's what you're trying to.
We don't want them to
prevent?
all come in at the last minute. Right now, we are in the stages where a number of entities, when we had the July 2018 date as the drop dead compliance date, we asked for reports November 1 that would be submitted so we can evaluate their progress since the time they applied for the waiver. We have received some reports. We haven't received all the reports that we should have received. Next week, we'd start the evaluation of those reports, and then the goal was to extend the waivers beyond that if they were moving towards that. We just don't want this to look like we're moving the date out another 18 months without there being some kind of active part on the part of the license.
But as part of the waiver, they're actually giving you a plan, right? And they're saying that this is their plan and we're approving that plan. And then we're going to go back and hit them with a corrective action.
It's just a correction. It's a way of noting that they're not compliant, that they're perhaps not moving at the speed that they thought that they would.
And that would mean the inspector would have to evaluate each one of
They have
those.
to anyway when they go out. They're having to do that.
Jenny, I assume what you mean is not an order of correction, but just
No,
an item in the inspection report.
Yeah, I find
Got
it in
it.
the inspection report.
Thanks, John. That's a
Yeah,
better correction. Yeah,
I call them a correction, but it'd be a list.
that's fine.
Just
I mean,
a note. like,
I want that.
this
I
is
want it.
There's a
going
waiver
on.
going, and
Right.
this.
Yeah, not
fine
a
with that.
corrective action.
I just didn't. The note of corrective action. I was concerned about that,
Okay.
especially when we granted him a waiver.
Are we voting?
Yeah, well, I think Victor seconded my motion, which is that what Laura said, basically allow up until December, authorize the executive officer to allow waivers up until December 2019 if needed. Is that right language?
Yes.
Okay, Victor seconded it. Public comment. All in favor? Okay.
All right. Let's see here.
Enforcement statistics. G.
Attachment 7. Anything you'd like to comment on there?
We've been busy.
Now, we were talking about as far as enforcement statistics, especially in the script when we put
Start providing more amplification of what led to the disciplinary action.
Good.
And Chairperson Shad, I did not notice on here the December Enforcement Committee date.
You know, the date has what? It's on the 12th?
It was just finalized. We just made sure we got a quorum. It's December 11th.
December 11th.
It'll be here in Sacramento.
Okay, great. Everybody look forward to that date. Put it on your calendars. Okay. Future committee meeting dates, as we stated here, December 11th, March 28th, 2018, June 7th, September 5, and December 13th, a year away, in 2018. Any comments from the board? Public comments?
That ends the report, and I think that's the last item of business for the board meeting. We were going to close into closed session again for a case that Ms. Friedman has advised that we need to consider.
Very briefly.
Very briefly.
Procedural.
You want public comments on something we've discussed or for future agenda? Webinar.
We can request.
Okay. Meeting adjourned into closed session.
Yeah.
We're going into closed session, sorry.
And we will reopen again, but only to adjourn the meeting.